Redditors who have explored the dark web, what did you find? Story 1. New tech, exploits and hacks, but that's mostly because it's required for my job to be aware of this stuff, to the point where I browse it at work. Lots of broken links and slow sites, lots of Russian stuff, illegal sales and CP, sadly not Club Penguin. These are the things I instantly get away from. I don't think they should exist, but mankind always finds a way to be creepy. Story 2. I found a forum where a guy tried to sell pictures of his middle-aged obese wife in fishnets. I'm not judging, but it was funny to see every other user trolling him by commenting on the state of the rooms the pictures were shot in. Dude, clean your windows. Is that hat over there for sale too? Etc. He responded to every post they made until a mod stepped in, stated that no one wanted his pictures, and closed the thread. Story 3. You pretty much only find what you go in looking for. These websites are not indexed the way the normal net is. You can't type in silkroad.onion. It's not set up like that. You have to find a long list of sites and choose the one you want. Then type in some that looks like A645aref.onion. That being said, I didn't go to the sites really. I just used the browser as a sort of proxy to view normal websites. But yeah, lots of CP, drugs, and general black market stuff. Story 4. I read a story once about a kid who went on the dark web and saw a post from a woman. I don't remember how he knew it was from a woman, but he did. Asking about a hitman to assassinate a guy that drove an XYZ car, the same kind that his dad drove. He later checked on it for some reason, and the woman had asked that he not be killed, but to just slash his tires and key his car or something like that. Later that week, his dad called his wife to tell her that his car had been keyed and his tires had been slashed. Somehow, the kid pieced it together that his mom ordered the job. Wish I remembered more details about it. It was an intense story. Story 5. I spent a lot of time on the deep web looking for conspiracy stuff, like top secret government files and crap like that. It's very slow. Like, back when I was a kid and we had a 2400 modem, that was far faster than Tor. Most of the links are broken. Of the non-broken links, there is some interesting stuff, but the majority of it is drugs and pirated movies, books, etc. Any site you see involving selling hitman services, slaves, or red rooms or anything like that is a scam. In general, if you avoid the stuff you don't want to see, you won't see it. However, stay away from image boards, even if they claim to be safe for work. There is some up stuff on the deep web, likely posted by the deep web equivalent of 4chaners. Story 6. A few years ago, I was mentioning to some online friends that I had downloaded Tor for fun. A friend sent me a URL of random numbers and letters and told me to enter. Being foolish, I did. I was greeted by a child auction site. Nightmares for weeks. Story 7. Okay, time for a brief explanation of what the dark web really is. The deep web is the part of the web not indexed by a search engine and more difficult to access. It contains stuff like private databases, academic resources, medical records, subscription-based websites, and password-protected content. These web pages are not intentionally hidden, but are simply not accessible through regular search engine indexing. The dark web is the part of the deep web that is intentionally hidden and heavily encrypted and needs special software to access, such as Tor. It may contain content that people wish to remain hidden but accessible, such as marketplaces for illegal goods and services, and forums for discussing illegal activities. It can also contain other content, such as forums for political dissidents who wish to remain hidden from governments. Story 8. If you think the dark web is some type of place that most YouTube videos try to make you believe, you'd be wrong. While they are somewhat correct, there's so much more to the dark web. Personally, the craziest thing I've seen is the ability to pay to have someone's kidney. I had a coworker who needed a kidney. They were going to put her on a wait list, but it would have been years long, and of course she would need dialysis. So another coworker said she was raising funds to get her kidney, and I was just like, how? She said she was going to get one in Turkey. Apparently, you can just go there legally and have it implanted, and she did do that just a few months later. Although I seriously question where that kidney came from. Probably some poor soul in another neighboring developing country, or even Turkey itself. Story 9. So I didn't personally, but I will tell the story. I had a friend. We were smoking in his basement, and at 2 a.m. he brought out a laptop with the battery pulled out of it and asked if I wanted to see something. Very high and curious, I said sure. We called another friend because he insisted we need to go to a coffee shop parking lot. We go. He plugs in the battery and starts the computer. He plugs in a flash drive and nothing insane happens. But a few things popped up. There was an application, sort of like a VPN, but it would randomize your IP address every 30 seconds. The next thing was, believe it or not, Norton Antivirus. Then he went to the flash drive contents, clicked something, and this marketplace opened. It was literally any you could think of, and it was almost like online shopping vendors had reviews. Some were verified by whoever owned the site. The friend who had the laptop and flash drive did buy online before, but stopped when he bought a package and got everything he paid for, but also a note with his full name and home address. He always sent the packages to someone else's house and paid them to get the package and such. It was creepy. He contacted the seller, and the seller just sent him the same thing as the note inside the package. 3 days after he gets his package, the seller disappears from the site. Nothing ever happened to him from the dark web, but now that friend beats his partners and is addicted to acid, so we aren't really friends anymore. More to add, it was not just drugs you could purchase on the marketplace. We were just clicking around looking at stuff. They had actual medications like chemo medications, insulin, steroids, hormones, antidepressants, mood stabilizers. They also had adult content you could purchase, but there wasn't much information about it. We concluded this meant it was likely horrible stuff and got away from that. You could also purchase urine that was 100% drug-free and would be shipped with special packaging to remain fresh. You could also become a special member of the site and have access to more things to purchase from, but my friend never did that. Story 10. I've watched an interesting documentary about how IR cameras on PCs and high-end smartphones can serve as surveillance. In the video, they spoke about how some cyber attacks on specific people, especially those links shared by hackers on Discords, can easily result in your digital facial clips recorded by your IR cameras and can easily be used in deepfake to conduct crimes online. Story 11. What you find depends on what you look for. There's a bunch of piracy sites, a lot of counterculture blogs, sites on hacking, not just black hat stuff, but a lot of white hat stuff too. You will also find a lot of sites in other languages too, especially ones you don't normally see, as a lot of dark web stuff is used to circumvent censorship. The most famous dark web network, Tor, was developed by the US Naval Research Lab, and most major news organizations will have some sort of presence there, just as a way to get tips they can't get otherwise. A lot of what people assume is there isn't as common as you might think, and a lot of what is there are government-run honeypots. It's not generally a browse thing. You tend to go to the dark web with a specific topic in mind and go to that. Source. I've given talks on the various dark web systems at conferences before, and testified on their uses in federal court. Story 12. It's a pretty well-hidden can of worms. Most of it is dead links and crypto scams, so if you give up after a few minutes, you'll be disappointed. But once you find one working link, you found them all. Because once you go down the pipeline, you are bound to stumble upon a website called The Hidden Wiki, which is where most working links are aggregated. What was it like? Mostly like Bee and Pole on crack. A lot of stupidity and extremism. What makes you lose faith in humanity is the CP. You hear about it in the news, but you don't know what it's like until you see it for yourself. I tried to steer away from anything graphic, and mostly managed to. That said, I lurked on their forums to see what gets shared and discussed. Images and videos are usually behind links, so I didn't risk seeing anything. We're talking forums with 200,000 plus users and 100,000 plus active. Story 13. It's hard to find what you're looking for, even harder to find a reliable source. The only currencies used are cryptocurrencies, and anonymity is taken extremely seriously. PGP encryption is widely used for direct messaging. I personally used it to purchase drugs. Once you have access to a reliable site, it's just the same as using a website on the ClearNet, only slower, and the interface is much older looking. I won't get into any details on how it's accessed for very obvious reasons, but the process of purchasing is normally just to find a listing on one of the market websites. Think eBay, only much shadier. Make sure the seller is reliable by checking reviews, etc., and then place an order. You message them directly using PGP, encrypted messages only they can decrypt, with your address, and pay them using some crypto. After a few days, a package shows up with whatever you bought in it, usually disguised as something else. For example, I bought LSD, and it came disguised as a SIM card. It's all very similar to the ClearNet, just with more security steps added in and a bit more risk. Story 14. If you want to hear a real darknet story, here it is. In high school, my friend introduced me to the Silk Road. He was selling Mary Jane by the half pound, and I helped him package up samples once. He got way too paranoid about getting caught, so he sold out, went to India, and spent his profits. When I was 19 on summer break from college, I got into it again because I wanted to buy some MDMA. This was on Silk Road 2.0, and I needed to buy Bitcoin to transact. So long before the current narrative that Bitcoin is the investment of a lifetime, there was a small community simply using it as one single part of the toolbox you needed to operate on the DNMS. Also worth mentioning is PGP encryption, Tor browser, and Tails bootable amnesic drive. I would go to a local store and buy Liberty X phone cards with cash, dropping thousands at this point of sale, and the guy decided to discontinue the phone card service because he knew I was doing something sketchy. Then I would tumble the coins through a service called Bitcoin Fog to erase the traceability on its way into my SR wallet. I got packs of MDMA of such high quality that I have never seen since. I bought thousands of hits of acid from Gamma Goblin, who is the most reputable and longest-running darknet vendor on planet Earth. I was walking around with 6 figures worth of Bitcoin stored in my brain at the age of 20. There used to be a subreddit called Darknet Markets, which was the hub of communication, tips, and vendor reviews, which no longer exists. Then AlphaBay came along, and I sold 2 pounds of Mary Jane for Bitcoin. AlphaBay was the first place I heard about XMR and ETH. If I had sold for either of those currencies or even just bought some, I would have made $1 million that year. While this was happening, I got into ketamine, and my vendor sent 2 needles for use with the K. I witnessed the rise and fall of SR2, AlphaBay, Agora, White House, Abraxas, and a few others. Now at the present day, I ran out of Monero, and it's non-trivial to buy it now without performing tax evasion. And I found that operating my crypto activities on the ClearNet was better and more profitable than trying to hide all of this illegal money, so I haven't been back to the markets in a few years. Story 15. There were many very interesting discussion forums, some of which were high quality. Believe it or not, the prevailing attitude I saw wasn't immorality. If there was a choice, people were against CP as a matter of principle. I would describe it on the whole as a libertarian utopia. For instance, look at the original Silk Road, version 1, not any of the offshoots. I'm not sure if this is common knowledge, but DPR briefly explored the possibility of a spin-off of the Silk Road called the Armory. Basically, it would be a website that sold guns to anyone in the world, likely disassembled components that would be smuggled through small shipments. But even though the software and the mechanisms for running such a marketplace were readily available, they decided it would be a terrible idea. Basically, the Silk Road abided by the idea of do no harm. They wanted to be peaceful and have the right to put what they wanted into their own bodies without government intervention. Obviously, the laws do not align with such an idea, but I do think it's interesting that even though people can mostly do whatever they want on the deep web, they are still deciding to uphold some basic notion of human decency. Story 16. Not as terrible as games and media made me think of it. It isn't riddled by hackers and murderers. Although one time my antivirus blocked a Trojan and I didn't download anything, so not sure what that was about. There was a website to chat with random people on the dark web, and I found someone exactly like me who was just curious about it. Story 17. I found a store for Apple products, and on the website there was a Q&A. One of the questions was, "How is it so cheap?" And its answer was, "All of our products are stolen." Honesty is their motto. Most likely it's a scam. Playing on people's greed is fairly standard in scamming. Stating goods are stolen is a classic line when ripping people off. You need to convince someone they're saving money to lure them to use an untrusted source. Story 18. I found one service once upon a time that I usually mention when Tor comes up in conversation. In short, this guy would randomize your mail for 6 to 7 weeks before you plan to get a delivery of something illegal, but he had no involvement in the shipping of anything illegal. You'd pay this guy a couple $100 and he'd send things to your residence on a weekly basis. Week 1, ice skates. Week 2, a board game. Week 3, sneakers. Week 4, an Xbox controller. So on and so forth. So you'd give him a schedule and a date of when you'd be ordering something illegal, and he'd spam your place with various packages of random, innocuous retail bullshit from distributors around the world leading up to the date you'd get drugs, or whatever, shipped to your home, in order to randomize your mail and create a pattern, or lack thereof, that allegedly would help decrease the chances that your order would ping some USPS monitor. Story 19. Not something I found on my own, but apparently there is, or was, a dating website where you would sign up and they would send you a shirt that you wore for 3 days without showering, and then you would send it back. Then they would send you other shirts and you would pick who you wanted to date based on their smell. There was this whole deep psychological argument behind it about human pheromones. What surprised me was that it wouldn't look out of place on the surface web. Story 20. I just went there for the thrill after hearing about it, like any edgelord. The 3 worst things I found: Cult of Cthulhu, a forum. This was screenshots posted on Reddit, never actually visited the site, where shared stories, and this guy told his story. He was under the impression he was having consensual sex with an 8-year-old. I have never entered the deep web since. But the most surprising, you clicked a link, the website's name showed up on a dark blue background. There are stars everywhere on the site, blinking in a distant haze. The website invites you by having a button that says Begin in purple. I feel my heart go missing, and then I press the button. Welcome to Random Cat Facts on the Dark Web. Click next for your new feline fact. Meow. I learned that cats guard the tombs of Egyptian pharaohs, which is pretty neat, I guess. Story 21. The blandness of it. There's a deep web wiki that has links on it to different interests, marketplaces, personals, etc., both legal and illegal. However, aside from that, it's literally just random forums and websites that you'd expect to find on the normal web. I've no idea why most of it was even there. I used it once like 10 years ago, so I have no idea how things have changed, if any, since then. But honestly, it's not what it's portrayed to be. Story 22. I'm not sure if it's necessarily considered dark web, but there's some old Black Hat forums I found myself on once. I think because I was trying to find a good working booter or something like that a long time ago, and I saw little teenagers, like 15 years old and talking about selling credit card details they've gotten from hacks and stuff. No idea if they did the hacking or not. Actually, I think it was usually whoever had done the hack and then dumped the info or sold the info on. Oh, and then the weirdest one was in 2011, when the Sony hack happened. I was in a live chat with about 1,000 other people, which had reporters and some feds in there along with a bunch of anonymous group people. That was weird, because reporters were getting called out without even saying crap. Story 23. A long time ago, when the deep web was pretty undeveloped and unknown to the masses, I saw that there was an assassination ring where big players would put up large amounts of money, betting that someone would live to a certain date. If the person lived to that date, they got their money back, and more. But people could take the bet, which means they put up a set percentage of the original amount and attempt to kill the person before the set date. I lost the link, or I would have reported it. But it was real and being used from what I saw. It might already be, but that sounds like an interesting premise for a movie. Story 24. A couple of years ago, I had to do a class report on the dark web and cryptocurrencies. I showed everyone a similar site to Silk Road and told people to buy Bitcoin. No one in the class paid attention, and now, Bitcoin has a lot of value.